It's no secret that footballers can be a bit of an odd bunch. That's not to say that every single player in this glorious game has a screw loose. However, there are the odd 1 or 2 or 10 footballing stars who opted to do things that can only be described as, well, crazy whilst under contract. And it's not hard to see why their clubs decided to send them packing soon after. Kung fu kicking, fans, reality TV show appearances, and even crapping next to a vehicle have all landed these particular players in the doghouse. I'm Gareth from What Culture Football, and here are 10 crazy reasons footballers were sacked by their club. Number 10, Adil Rami, missing training due to being on a reality TV show. French centre-back Adil Rami has had a quietly decent career during his 17-year run as a senior professional footballer. Turning out for clubs such as Lille, Valencia, AC Milan, Sevilla and Marseille, Rami has never been short of potential employers in his time in the game. However, Rami isn't everyone's cup of tea, and that much was clear during his time at Marseille. After missing training one day due to a supposed injury towards the end of the 2018-19 season, the defender went off to record an episode of the French reality TV show Fort Boyard without the club's permission. It's also worth noting that the show involved the contestants performing highly physical stunts. Rami was eventually sacked in August 2019 for gross misconduct after his Fort Boyard adventure, despite the star claiming Marseille were fully aware of his appearance on the show, and he eventually moved on over to Turkey where he made just one league appearance for Fenerbahce. Number 9, Dennis Wise, breaking the nose and jaw of a teammate after losing a card game. Here's a life lesson: it's probably not wise to piss off someone who used to play in a team known as the Crazy Gang. If you need an example of why this wasn't, and probably still isn't, a good idea, then look no further than Dennis Wise's period at Leicester City. Wise was involved in a card game during the club's 2002 pre-season tour of Finland, which eventually escalated, to put it lightly. Things then went past the point of no return when Wise decided to thump teammate Callum Davidson in the face, breaking his jaw and nose in the process. This eventually resulted in Wise being kicked out of the club due to serious misconduct. But that wasn't the last we'd hear of the situation. Wise decided to appeal his sacking, and he finally won in 2004. However, by that time, the company in charge of the club had gone into administration. Scuffles happen between teammates all the time, so Wise was probably right to feel frustrated by this abrupt decision. That being said, most colleagues don't break each other's jaws when they don't see eye to eye, so you could say Leicester had a fair enough reason to get rid. Number 8, Adrian Mutu taking cocaine. During his time at Parma, Adrian Mutu became something of a scoring sensation as he bagged 18 goals for the club in the 2002-2003 season. So it wasn't long before the big boys of the Premier League came calling, and a newly minted Chelsea forked out £15.8 million for the talented Romanian forward in August 2003, signing him to a 5-year deal. He hit the ground running 11 days after signing, bagging the winner from long range in a 2-1 victory over Leicester City, and he also bagged another 2 goals against Tottenham Hotspur soon after. However, things started to turn sour a year later with the arrival of future club legend Jose Mourinho, and the player didn't exactly help himself by getting banned from the game for 7 months in September 2004. Mutu had tested positive for cocaine use, and a source claimed that he may have even been affected by the drug during games too. Chelsea ultimately decided to sever ties with the star in the wake of this revelation, citing gross misconduct as the reason behind his release. Number 7, Patrice Evra, kung fu kicking a fan. Known primarily for his time at Manchester United as one of Sir Alex Ferguson's most trusted on-field generals, Patrice Evra wasn't ever one to shy away from confrontation. He infamously clashed with Chelsea stewards at Stamford Bridge in 2008, and happily celebrated in front of Liverpool's Luis Suarez, who had recently served an 8-match ban for racial abuse towards the player. However, neither of those incidents led to Evra losing his job. The same can't be said for one particular moment of madness which came during his time as a Marseille player in 2017 though. Before a Europa League match against Vitoria had even begun, the former France captain kung fu kicked one of his own fans after the supporter appeared to insult the Champions League winner. He was subsequently banned from all European competitions for 7 months, and Marseille decided to part ways with the legendary left-back. with the club stating that he committed an irreparable act by responding to provocations from a handful of individuals. Well, they're not wrong. Number 6, Mark Bosnich, also taking cocaine. Another former Chelsea player makes this list, and yet again, recreational white powder was the reason for their time at the club being cut short. Mark Bosnich was seen as the heir to Peter Schmeichel's throne when he was re-signed by Manchester United in 1999. But he eventually found himself pushed down the pecking order after the arrival of Fabian Barthez a year later. The Australian keeper eventually decided to jump ship to Chelsea in January 2001 on a free transfer, signing a deal worth around £45,000 a week, which was a lot back then. Due to fitness problems, Bosnich was only able to make his debut the following season before getting injured in a league match against Everton in November 2001. This would turn out to be his last ever appearance as a Chelsea player, with the club tearing up his contract after he failed a drug test in November 2002. Despite 21-year-old captain John Terry warning the keeper that he was hanging around with the wrong crowd, Bosnich couldn't shake his cocaine habit, and subsequently spent 5 years away from football, reportedly spending around $5,000 a week on the drug. Number 5, Jeffrey de Vischer, taking a dump next to his car after a drunken night out. In 2012, Dutch winger Jeffrey de Vischer was enjoying his time as part of Dutch team FC Emmen. Perhaps a little bit too much? After one particular night out on the town, de Vischer felt he had no choice but to pull over and relieve himself next to his car, in a forest. Once the police spotted de Vischer mid-squat, the heavily pissed footballer reportedly claimed that his friend was the one who drove him to the spot, and he'd fled the scene soon after, as all good friends do. De Vischer was clearly in a sticky situation in more ways than one, and his club were quick to react to the embarrassing incident once they caught wind of what had transpired. FC Emmen cancelled his contract and de Vischer was forced to go looking for a new club after drunkenly dropping a deuce. Thank you. Number 4, Lee Clark wearing a provocative t-shirt. In this day and age, with most football fans being equipped with smartphones, you wouldn't imagine that any footballer would be crazy enough to plant themselves among their rival club supporters. However, back in 1999, lifelong Toon fan and former Newcastle United player Lee Clark clearly didn't care about getting caught and decided to wear a sad Mackem naughty word t-shirt whilst dancing around with the black and white crowd during their FA Cup final outing. Being a Sunderland player at that moment in time, Clark was quickly dropped from the team once images surfaced of him wearing the aforementioned explicit item of clothing. He would never play for the Mackem side again and was ultimately allowed to move to Fulham before finally returning to Newcastle, which was probably for the best. Number 3, Nicolas Anelka anti-Semitic gesture. It was the 2013-2014 season, and Premier League veteran Nicolas Anelka had just bagged a goal for West Bromwich Albion against West Ham United, when he decided to perform a gesture which would signal the beginning of the end of his time with the club. After choosing to show off a canal celebration after scoring, Anelka was banned for 5 games due to the gesture being strongly associated with anti-Semitism. For those who aren't aware, the canal gesture has been described as an inverted Nazi salute when performed. Anelka later confessed that he only used the celebration as a show of support towards his friend Dieudonné, a French comedian who had been convicted multiple times on anti-Semitic charges. The player then announced on social media that he would be leaving the club in order to preserve his integrity, before West Brom clarified that the termination was invalid as it was not conducted under the correct legal process. His post that day led to the club giving him the official boot not long after due to gross misconduct. Number 2, Sergio Berti, spitting on a teammate. You'd be forgiven for not knowing much about Argentinian ace Sergio Berti. Despite making a decent 22 appearances for his country, the player didn't really make much of a splash in Europe with spells at Parma and Zaragoza. Instead, the majority of his club's success came during his 3 separate spells at River Plate, where he won 5 league titles and 3 domestic cups. He also briefly played for Barcelona, the Ecuadorian one. After his stint with Barca SC, Berti decided to step out of his comfort zone in 2002 and moved to Scottish Premier League side Livingston in search of a new challenge. Berti's time with Livingston was abruptly brought to an end, however, after he reportedly spat on an 18-year-old teammate during a pre-season friendly. Club chairman Dominic Keane clearly was having none of it and sent the player packing, but Berti remarkably managed to win his appeal against the sudden termination of his contract. This meant that the club would have to honour the remaining time in his deal, and he was paid a mega £250,000 without ever kicking a ball for the Scottish club. Number 1. Johnny Dos Santos. Karate kicking a referee. The moment you put your hands on an official, you know you're in trouble. The moment you karate kick one, your career may very well be over. That's exactly what happened when Brazilian football player Johnny Dos Santos decided to take aim at a referee in the wake of a lower league game between Independente Limeira and Marília in 2013. In the video, Dos Santos can be seen wandering up to the referee before unleashing a sudden karate kick to his shoulder, leaving the official with multiple cuts on both his shoulder and arm. The defender was then immediately arrested and was sacked by his club not long after being taken away by the authorities. We've seen referees knocked over and the occasional shoving match, but to see one booted so viciously after simply trying to do their job is both sad and disturbing in equal measure.